Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be spitting fire about the terrible state of Chicago sports. So be prepared. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The team just got purchased by the Chicago Blackhawks, which is really cool, and will link the two franchises for the foreseeable future. So doubly make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, and tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, I don't know which dumpster fire you want to start with here.
Okay, so I don't know about you, and I just want to bring this up. This isn't necessarily the thing I'm most mad about. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I know we usually don't start off our shows talking about Bulls unless Bulls are a special topic, but I just have to ask you one really, really quick thing. Were you not just appalled by that loss against Toronto Friday night? Because we've seen some terrible losses over the past few years, this year especially. We've either had buzzer beaters, we've had big blown leads, but what we saw against the Raptors was despicable. I mean, that made me just throw up my hands, and I was so mad. I just said, I'm done with this team. It's irrational, I know, but I'm so sick of losing games like that, and I thought that after we made those trades, things would be a little different.
You mean the game against the Atlanta Hawks? They beat the Raptors.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh yeah, the Hawks game was pathetic because I get it. It's gonna we all said it. Everybody said it. It's gonna take time for this team to gel because that was a major shakeup of the roster.
Right.
I get that. And we went on a 6-game losing streak. I get it. But then they turned the corner. They won a few in a row. And
you looked great in Indiana.
Yeah. And I know you beat a bad Raptors team. Okay. But you beat Indiana, good win. Even if the Nets were not fully staffed, you still beat the Nets.
You still beat them, yeah. I mean that was on the road, wasn't it? I missed that game.
I don't remember. I just saw the highlights of it because I was
regardless.
Yeah, it was
regardless.
But the Hawks game, and we said it. They played Hawks game 1, and I said this game is going to look different now than it does towards the end of the season. But the result was the same, and that was frustrating because Zach LaVine looked like the man.
Yeah, he was chasing Wilt Chamberlain there for a while. What was it, 39 points in the first half? I mean, ridiculous.
39 points in the first half, yeah.
Okay, so put this in perspective for a second. Just put it in perspective. You have a guy who's going off, your top player, and every time he plays, he looks better and better. I mean, the dude was a freaking all-star, for goodness sake. The guy is tearing it up, and he has been fun as hell to watch. So you have a game where you get that performance from him, and then, you look at some of the other guys in the scorebook. Vucevic had a pretty good team as well. Pretty good game, I should say. Blech, words. So, okay, you get 2 really good performances from them. And to be exact, you have the 50 from LaVine, and then Vooch had 25. So right there, a combined 75 points between 2 players. And you lost 120 to 108.
Yep. Markkinen was especially bad. 27 minutes, 5 points.
Thomas Satoransky didn't score. He was 0 for 6. Thaddeus Young had 4. Patrick Williams had 4. Brown Jr. had 5. Theus had 4. Kobe White, he had 11 points, but
on 4 of 11 shooting, so he was sub 500 shooting night again.
Yeah.
And nobody was really hitting other than the two that scored. Sato was 0 for 3. P. Will was 0 for 1. Kobe White was 1 for 5. Markkinen was 1 for 3. Brown was 1 for 4. And really nobody shot any free throws. So it's just, the rest of the team just sat around watching Zach LaVine score. And that's an unfair position to put somebody in. We've already seen that brand of basketball is out the window, and you can't have one guy just take over and score all the points and win games when they count. This Hawks team made an adjustment. The Bulls were up fairly big at halftime.
13.
And the Hawks made the adjustment. They switched how they guarded Zach LaVine, and nobody else from the Bulls was able to step up and score. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and okay, so he has this big game, and then they make their adjustments. And here's the thing. If you watch that game, if you watch the fourth quarter, LaVine was going cold. He wasn't maintaining that ridiculous shot percentage he was having in the first half of the game. He started to go cold. I don't know if you remember this particular moment, but he was like triple teamed, and he just lobbed up a 3 attempt that wasn't close. And of course, the Atlanta Hawks got the rebound easily. And the minute he took that shot, you knew that was a terrible shot selection. And Stacey King even said, he's like, oh man, that's a terrible shot. But the thing is, when he went cold, nobody else warmed up. Everyone else was cold that entire game. It's just when Zach LaVine goes cold and nobody else is doing anything, then you're kind of in trouble. And that's what happened. I mean, even in the fourth quarter, the game was still there for them to take. It was still well for them to take. And yet you lost by more than 10 points. I mean, those last few minutes were unbelievably terrible. And it almost looked like they just threw their hands up like, well, we blew this one. Let's just get out of here. I mean, just watching that unfold was beyond nauseating, because I really thought, shame on me, fool on me, that we were over that. I thought with these changes, we were over that. And Sean, you said it earlier in the show. We've said it on other shows previously. We understand that there was going to be some time to, mesh and get the chemistry going. But then you win these few games, and you're thinking, okay, maybe we have something here. We aren't bringing in no-name guys. We are bringing in a bona fide all-star and a couple of veterans. These guys could adjust quicker because they've been in the league, and, they're good players. So I thought we were over this. I really did. But then they collapsed like they have in so many games this season earlier before you made all these changes. That was just a punch in the gut.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. And this should have been a huge night for Zach LaVine, both personally and professionally, because you look at it and it's the highest number of points he's ever scored, which is a big deal. And it would have been, if he won this game, it would have been the first time in his career he's won 4 consecutive games.
Well, apparently fate was not allowing that. I mean, just imagine if they won that game. Imagine how many people would be talking about Zach LaVine's performance. I mean, how often does a player score 50 points?
He's the 5th Bull to ever do it.
Yeah.
Jordan did it like 150,000 times, but pretty much any other Bull, it was very few numbers of Bulls that did it in very few numbers of times. So it's actually a really big deal. And the rest of the team, there's still a lot of work to do on this roster. And it kind of just goes to the point is, we saw it in the Indiana win. Markkinen and Kobe White are bench players.
Mm-hmm.
They are coming off the bench. And I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but Billy Donovan said that I'm being truthful here. That's where those players are. They're still important to us, but they're bench players.
Yeah, and being a bench player is not necessarily a bad thing. If you're a really darn good bench player and you help teams win, there is no shame in that whatsoever.
Yeah, there's a difference between being an important bench player and being Cristiano Felicio.
Right.
Like, there's a big difference. But, you have to, if you are truly trying to make this your craft and be the best player you can, don't you take that as a little bit of a slap in the face and say, all right, we got called out and said we're bench players and be better. Like, that's, they got worse. They regressed. So after that Indiana game, was it a game or two after was this Hawks game, and you have them just be bad, flat out bad. Those two could have stepped up, won that game, and been like, listen, they're taking away Zach LaVine, and when you're triple teaming one guy, somebody else has got to be open, and if you're not hitting shots, take it to the rim. Take it to the rim. Draw the foul. You look at that game, and Kobe White went to the free throw line for 2 shots. Markkanen, 2 shots. Tice, 2 shots. Vooch didn't shoot any free throws. Satoransky, no free throws. P. Will, no free throws. Young, no free throws. Like, they didn't go to the line. You know what? Take it. If you're not hitting, your shots aren't falling, take it to the rim. Take it. That game was yours for the win. And if your name wasn't
Zach LaVine, the shots were clearly not falling.
Yeah. It was frustrating.
Yeah, and I've been a fan of Kobe White. You know that. Everybody who knows me knows that. But I see talent in him, but he could be so frustrating. Yep. So frustrating. Because you see those times where he gets really 3 happy, where he's just jacking up threes, and you can clearly tell he's not going to make it, but he keeps doing it anyway, or he's fouling 3-point shooters, and some of the bad turnovers. It's just so frustrating to watch, because I want him to be so good, so bad, and I see an athleticism in him. It's just, I don't know if Lauri Markkanen's really going to be part of this team in the future. I really don't. What's frustrating about Lauri Markkanen is that every time he shows like a few games of like legitimate good to great play, whether it's on the bench or starting, and you think, oh, maybe he's finally finding something here, he either A, just has some crappy games, or B, gets hurt.
I don't think Lauri Markkanen is part of this team in the future.
I don't either. I mean, I really don't either. And I have nothing against the guy personally. It just hasn't worked out the way we hoped. And when he first started in the league, I really had hope for the kid. I really, really did. But I think we might be past that point now. I still think he could be a successful NBA player. I just don't think it's going to be here.
No, it just, you know what? I think if he's going to be successful, just not going to be here. He and his team feel that he's player A, and the Bulls feel like he's player B. And if you can't align to who you are as a player, both as your role and financially, it's just not going to work. I've heard from enough people, including Mark Shanowski, that Lonzo Ball is the Bulls' target, and they're going to have to make a decision. If they decide to sign him in free agency, they can't keep Lauri Markkanen. And I think when you look at the way the Bulls front office want this team to be, is they need a proper point guard, and they need a better defender.
Lonzo
And-
Ball makes so much more sense.
Yeah, he makes more sense for this team. And, Lauri Markkanen is not a defensive basketball player, and he's not a point guard.
No.
Lonzo Ball is more what they need for this to be a better team. And so I really would be shocked if he is back on this team. I think they will throw him some sort of offer as a last ditch, but I don't think he's on this team next year.
Yeah, I don't either. I just don't see it. But I know the Bulls are playing again, and I didn't think I could stomach watching the next game. I was just so upset after that last loss. I'm like, okay, I think I need to step away for a bit. It's just too bad because I was so excited when Zach LaVine was going on a tear, and I thought, man, what if he gets over 50 and, they have a nice, easy win, how good this will feel for everybody. But it just ended in straight bitter defeat.
Yeah, it was tough.
Oh, man.
It was real tough.
But you know what? I've also decided that's not the thing I'm most angry about. So, to be fair, but I'm still not happy about it.
So I'm gonna guess I know what you're most unhappy about. Should we switch gears here?
Yeah. Can I just mini rant here? Mini rant.
Go for it.
How the hell do you get bullwhipped by Pittsburgh? How the hell do you get outscored so unbelievably heavy by a team some people didn't even think could win 60 games this year and still might not win 60 games this year? How do you have twice as many strikeouts than you do hits? How are pitchers in the National League hitting better than your entire team? Look, I know baseball is a long, grueling season of ups and downs. But they've been doing this for years now.
Yeah, I was chiming in. This is not new. This is not like, oh man, they're just in a cold streak and bad luck. This is who they are. Look, this year so far, I know this is a young season still, but this team is by 20 points the lowest team batting average in all of baseball. By 20 points. Mm-hmm. They're batting 168 as a team. 168. You're like, okay, well then that's just a cold start. Well, last year they batted 218 as a team. They were 28th. And they weren't that much higher than 30th. So they were just barely above last in team batting average. And I know batting average is not everything, but you can tell when you look at those lists who the good teams are and who the not good teams are. And last year, they were there with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And this year, they're just dead last. Nobody is as bad as they are as hitting. And when you have your pitchers are able to hold this to 2-1 games or, 1-0, then you're like, okay, well, we got the win. And you kind of gloss over how bad that they're hitting. But, when your pitchers aren't having a good night, guess what? Your bats need to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is a garbage team. A garbage team.
Sean, I got the stats right in front of me. And, okay, so you have a few decent OBPs because of walks and hit by pitches. Happ's OBP is 323. Contreras 364 because he gets hit every other at bat for whatever reason. Bryant, your best hitter, the only one who, is actually doing something is 361 than everyone else.
Not a single player on this team is batting over 250.
Nope. And here's some of the OBPs also. Anthony Rizzo, 250. Jock Peterson, 188. Baez, he's not a non-base machine, 286. He's hitting home runs, but my God, some of the strikeouts. I mean, he's always been like that, but since the beginning of 2020, last year and this year so far, he looks like the 2014 version of himself.
Yeah.
I mean, literally swinging at everything. Jason Hayward, 226. Eric Sogard, 143. David Bodie, 208. And these are the on-base percentages. These aren't even the batting averages. The batting averages, Happ, 160. Contreras, 200. Rizzo, 133. Bryant, 233. Peterson, 138. Baez, 242. Baez, who strikes out like 3 times a game, is right now your best hitter in terms of average. Again, I know average doesn't mean anything, but just pointing that out. Hayward, 172. Sogard, 143. Matt Duffy, 125. David Bodie, 100. You are playing the Pirates. You've had 6 games against the Pirates. You're not playing the Yankees. You're not playing the Cardinals. You're not playing the Dodgers. You're playing the goddamn Pirates.
And they're kicking. They look so much better than you. It's not like, oh, they lucked into a few runs. They are clobbering you.
Yeah.
If you was just an eyeball test and you just said which one of these teams is the preseason contender for the division and which one of these teams is predicted to lose 100 games. And I guarantee you everybody is going to go, the team in the blue and white is the one that's going to lose 100 games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's no way you watched all those games and said the Cubs are the better team.
No, and you know what the other frustrating thing too is? Those wins the Cubs did get against the Pirates, they kind of had to claw their way to those. The second game of the season, their first win of the season, they won that pretty handily. But last Sunday, the game I was at, barely hung on 4-3. And then the game, their first game this series, they won 4-2. You had to come back from behind, and you almost blew it. Thank God for Craig Kimbrell. But this is a team that good teams look at what the Reds did to them. The Reds bulldozed that team. And you know what? I guarantee you whoever plays them next is probably going to bulldoze them too.
Yep. Absolutely.
How many times are we going to let those guys on Pittsburgh just destroy us? Now, look, let's say the Cubs were 6-2 and they won pretty much all the games except today you just got flat beat. Okay, because you know what? In a 162-game season, you are going to see the very best team at least once get blown out by a terrible one. That's what happens over 162. But this is 2 games in a row that we've gotten destroyed by these guys. Our offense is terrible, and you haven't looked dominant once this year.
Nope.
This is the easy part of your schedule. You have to go to Milwaukee now. Then you have to play the Atlanta Braves. Have fun with this pitching staff against that team. The only thing you can hope is the Cubs maybe put forth a little more effort and maybe don't play down to their competition less than say, hey, we need to beat these better teams. Sports can be weird that way, but right now, do I have a lot of confidence? Until they show me, no, I don't.
And here's the thing: is I saw somebody on Twitter was saying, you know what? When the team is batting this bad, you gotta. He's like, you can't blame the hitters. You got to blame the hitting coach. And I was like, how many hitting coaches do they have to go through? And he was like, Iapoce has been the hitting coach since 2018. And I was like, they hired him in 2018 after the season was over. But in the past 4 full seasons, they have had 3 hitting coaches. So, I mean, this is obviously a partial season, but the last 2, it's been Iapoce, and then before that was 1 season of Chili Davis, and then before that was the John Maley era. So how many hitting instructors do you go through that when your team just struggles?
Yeah, remember when we all thought it was Chili Davis's fault? Sorry, Chili.
You know, and they fired John Maley, and then they were like, well, Chili Davis is the guy. And everybody hated Chili Davis. And then they were like, okay, well, let's get rid of Chili Davis and bring somebody else in. And then everything just went worse. It's plummeted. So this team is absolutely a flawed team. And
teams know how to beat them.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. Teams just know how to beat these guys. You can pitch around them. You can put some of the guys who walk on base because they're not going to drive in the runs. They know that. That's just, You can pitch around Wilson Contreras. You could pitch around Chris Bryant. You could pitch around Anthony Rizzo. They're not going to get picked up. They're just going to pitch to their weaknesses, and that's how you beat the Cubs.
And the thing is, you know, we have decisions to make as a team, and I don't feel comfortable extending anybody. I honestly, and this is not a knee jerk anymore, because a year ago this might have been a knee jerk.
Mm-hmm.
But how long do we have to see this team absolutely struggle before you go, you know what? I think it's time to just blow it up and rebuild, because this is a flawed team. And I don't know how you correct that. Is Baez is going to want a lot of money, and there's a lot of things that he does well, but you know, we've seen what a bad Javi Baez at bat looks like, and you know, in a few years we're going to see a lot more of those. You know, that once that bat speed slows down a little bit, when he hits 30, that contract's going to look real bad. You know, Rizzo apparently wants a whole lot more than the Cubs are willing to offer him. And what comfort level do you have with number of years and amount of money with Anthony Rizzo? Chris Bryant has looked okay so far, but he looks far from the guy who won an MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, I know we could talk about knee-jerk reactions early in the season, but if you ask me right now, just right this minute, would I extend these guys? I'd say no, honestly. Even a Wilson Contreras, too. I mean, look, the core can improve this season. There's definitely room for improvement, but you brought up so many good points. I mean, with Baez, here's my fear with Baez. This is my fear. I'm not declaring that this is what's going to happen. You know, maybe I eat my words and he goes on a tear again, but when you have a guy like Baez, who's a free swinger, he'll have his prime. And I'm just worried now that we've seen his peak. That 2018, 2019, that was his peak. I mean, he's clearly not going to adjust his game.
No.
It's never going to happen.
And the thing is Baez is best when he's being super aggressive and he's trying to turn that single into a double, or that double into a triple, when he's making these great fielding plays and he's relying on his speed and his athleticism and that bat speed. But what happens when he hits that 3-0 mark is whenever he tries to turn that single into a double, it ain't going to happen. Turn that double into a triple, not happening. And then he has to, then how do you adjust your game at that point? The way his game is built is he's very streaky, and you know, he relies on his speed and athleticism and aggression, and those things don't age well in sports. And this is a very hard game to completely, as a hitter, to completely change your game. You know, basketball, you've seen guys like Jordan where they learned to, you know, different moves, like to be able to post up, or the turnaround jump shot, or you see a guy like LeBron where he just studied the game and is able to anticipate what other people are doing. You see hockey where people are able to, you know, use that experience to you know, anticipate plays and be in passing lanes. You see it in football where the game just slows down and they're able to, you know, recognize what the other team is doing. Baseball's not like that. It's not like, oh, I recognize where this hitter is going to hit it and be there. You know, it's his game is not built for longevity. So I'm scared to death of him on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that. I think it's a legitimate concern. I really do. And you look at some of the other guys on this team. Take a look at Anthony Rizzo and his situation. I don't want to talk about him like he's 38, but when you're a big guy with a bad back on the wrong side of 30, you do worry. And you know what? He's really not driving the ball. He's either popping it up or hitting it on the ground. And, last year, he wasn't great. He wasn't terrible. But I think that this year is going to really kind of tell you what he has in store for the future. I mean, if there's one Cub that I feel comfortable extending, it'd probably be him. Now, Bryant has done some pretty good things in terms of driving the ball and hitting extra base hits or whatnot. But, like you said, he's not exactly the MVP level. I do think that he could still have a pretty good season, but we've seen with Bryant the past 2 years, the inconsistency and the clear holes in his swing and the nagging injuries too. A lot of them. I mean, is that really worth giving a big extension to? Because look, I think with Anthony Rizzo and Javier Baez, in terms of just extensions, you have a little more wiggle room. But with Chris Bryant, when you're a Scott Boras client, you know he's going to want to get a payday.
Yeah, and here's my thing is, do I think that you absolutely can't re-sign Rizzo and extend him? No. It is all these guys, it's a balancing act of what is your comfort level, your risk level for how many years and how much money. Now, if Rizzo is like, you know what, I'll do a 3-year extension at 18 per year, you go, absolutely. Because he's going to be 32 mid-year this year. And so you're like, okay, by the end of this contract, he'll be 35. And you're like, okay, I can live with that. You probably get 2 solid years, maybe all 3 solid years. You live with it. But Baez, you're like, okay, he's probably going to want a lengthy contract and big money per year. Like, how many years do you feel comfortable with him and what dollar level? And the same thing with Bryant. It just comes down to what comfort level. And you're right. With Bryant is you have him with Scott Boras as an agent, and you don't, and people are like, some people would want to stay here, and I'm sure he would love to stay in Chicago, but you don't hire Scott Boras as your agent if you want to give hometown discounts. It's not a draft. You don't get assigned an agent. You don't get, you choose your agent. You hire your agent. You go out and you see which agent is going to work best for you. He hired Scott Boras, so he knows full well who Scott Boras is and what Scott Boras does. And that is what Scott Boras does. And I'm not going to knock him because, he does well for his clients. And
yes, he does. And I can't be mad at Brian for hiring him.
No. But you do not, if you're in a spot where you're like, you know what, I like it here and I'm willing to take less money, knowing I'm going to be filthy rich no matter what I do, to stay in one place for my entire career, then you don't hire Scott Boras. There's a lot of good baseball agents, and they will do a good job and get you money. But when you hire Scott Boras, you hire him for one reason, is to get the most money possible for you.
And for him to basically handle much of your stuff.
Right.
Because Chris Bryant's even said before, a lot of housekeeping things, he says, my agent does that. My agent does that. Again, that's not knocking him. That's just the reality of it. I mean, why do you think Chris Bryant didn't get a club-friendly extension like some other young core people are getting around baseball? Scott Boras, that was never going to happen with him as a Scott Boras client. And, like I said, I can't knock Brian one bit for having Scott Boras as his agent. And if Chris Bryant really just views this as a job more than loyalty to a team, that's him. That's him. That's just the reality of it. I mean, it's his career, it's his life. At the end of the day, it's really up to him the way he handles it. But I'm not going to knock him too much of that. But that's just the reality is that extending Bryant is not as easy as 1, 2, 3. But just going back to the whole dynamic of this team, you look at this team itself and you say, going into the season, there's the part of me that looks at this team that gives me that feeling that Jed Hoyer was planning on this kind of being the turning point anyway. I mean, I truly believe that Hoyer did have some confidence in the core, making them a contender, and maybe they still can. I don't know, but I think Jed has many long-term plans in mind. He's in charge now, and I mean, the Cubs did not go all out this offseason, whether it's Jed Hoyer or Tom Ricketts not wanting to spend money, but I think that Jed Hoyer darn well knew that the possibility of having to make some big decisions and having to go forward into a new era this year was pretty high. I don't think this is going to, if the Cubs keep failing, I don't think it's going to come to a shock to Jed Hoyer that he might have to make some selling moves. I think he's darn well prepared for it and maybe even anticipating it. And you look at some of the moves that the Cubs have made this offseason, taking flyers on guys like Trevor Williams, Eric Sogard, Matt Duffy, bringing Jake Arrieta back. I mean, that right there, it's kind of one of those things where you're fishing to say, if we can hit on one of these guys, maybe you could flip them for something. You turn trash into treasure.
I mean, I think that's probably the hope. Is because this team is not going anywhere, and I don't know what else you'd do.
Okay, let's say the trade deadline is right now.
Right. Okay.
Who are your big chips? Frankly, I think the one big chip right now that this team has, if the trade deadline right now, is Craig Kimbrell, because he's not just getting outs by getting lucky. Like, he's legitimately blowing smoke by these people. Like, he legitimately looks dominant again. He's right now probably your most valuable asset. Your closer is right now probably your most valuable asset. And you look at let's look at the rest of the pitching staff. Andrew Chafin's pitching pretty well. Maybe you get something for him. You look at the rotation. Kyle Hendricks has been one of the most underrated, most efficient starters in the game the past 5 years. My fear with him, though, is if you tried to dangle him in a potential trade, teams are going to look at him like, oh, well, he's a soft tosser. He's not a big pump strikeout guy. Do we really want to trade for that, even though he is efficient? I don't know if you get the same kind of return that an ace that throws harder does. That's something you got to think about. But then you look at the lineup. Nobody has any trade value right now. No, nobody.
No.
Not right now, at least.
Yeah, this is this is the opposite of what the White Sox had when they tore it down, where they had a few chips that they were able to flip for a lot of prospects. You
had Chris Sale, you had Jose Quintana, you had Adam Eaton, you had you didn't trade Jose Abreu, but he was a valuable asset. You had guys. On paper, the Cubs have guys, but they're not playing like it, and that's gonna obviously hurt your value.
Yeah, and this team is just not good, and I have no idea what the long-term solution is, but can you think of a worse 2-season start to having your own TV network than what we've gotten so far?
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of last year was out of their control, but yeah.
Not saying everything's in their control is just, if you could have thought of a worst case scenario, is the number one cable provider didn't carry you for a long time. You had a pandemic shortened season. You didn't play well. It's just like everything that could go bad has gone bad, and you're like, oof. Yeah, this is not how you expected this to go.
Imagine if they got this network up in 2015.
that would have been probably the ideal moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, you spent all that money on renovation. You spent all that money on the TV network. And the funny thing is those all came into completion after you won the World Series. Because remember, when the Cubs won the World Series in 16, the renovations at Wrigley were not even halfway over. You redid the bleachers. That's about it. Because when they rebuilt the lower level, when they finished Gallagher Way, and they started selling their pumpkins there, and you built the Hotel Zachary, and you built all those new buildings across the street, that all happened after the World Series. Imagine if all that was there before the World Series, and you had Gallagher Way during the World Series. And then if you had the Marquee Network during the World Series season and all that stuff. Heck, even if you had it in 2017, the year they were the defending champs, and they were able to make it back to the NLCS, but all this stuff kind of came into completion as things were trending downward.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. It is absolutely tough, and I mean, and there's still a lot of room to right this ship, but you know, it's not looking good at this point.
We're lucky right now. We're lucky and fortunate that every team in this division has some warts. Look at the Cardinals. Their pitching has been garbage so far.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute garbage.
Yep. The Reds are winning this division.
Well, that offense is certainly clicking, that's for sure. I cannot help but wonder if the Reds team we're going to see this year was the one we thought we were seeing last year. Because if you remember, they got off to a terrible start, and then towards the end, they started playing incredibly well. So things might have been trending up for them. They keep hitting the way they do, and every time Castellanos smashes a ball, it hurts.
It really does. That they kept the wrong guy.
He wanted to be here, man. He wanted to be here. And look, I like Jock Peterson. I like him a lot. But it's time for him to start doing what he did in spring training, or at least a resemblance of it.
Yeah, mash some balls. Mash some.
I mean, that goes for everybody, really. But
yeah, you know. But going back to the first game of this Pirates series, the one that ended today, they won 4-2, but 100% of their runs were scored on home runs. The whole team philosophy this year was they were going to try to manufacture runs and not rely on the long ball. But that's what they're doing. Long ball. Relying on the long ball.
Well, they're manufacturing strikeouts, that's for sure.
They really are. And, you know, yesterday's game is you had one just truly awful inning, and your offense couldn't do anything to muster help for, you know, that Zach Davies in that game. Like, you couldn't do anything. In your Brewers game, the 4-2 loss, 3 hits. The game before that, 4-0 loss, 1 hit. You had 4 hits over 2 games.
Plus an extra inning.
Yeah, plus an extra inning. And you look, this week, since we recorded our last episode, they lost 4-0 to the Brewers, 4-2 to the Brewers, so that's 8-2 they were outscored. They beat Pittsburgh 4-2, so that's 10-6 they were outscored. Then they lost 8-2, so they were 18-8. So they were 25-9. They were outscored this week. 25-9. And most of those runs were off home runs. Of those 9.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at today's game. First and second, 1 out. Guys in the corner, nobody out. You didn't get a single run. And you know what else is really sad? When this team falls behind 2-3 runs, everyone now just declares game over. They're not going to overcome this.
No, they can't. They've shown over the last 2 seasons they can't overcome multiple run deficits. No.
How many times did they strike out Saturday night? Like 13 times?
Oh, I don't know. I kept switching back and forth between the Hawks game because at least the Hawks won.
Yeah. No, I mean, I turned off the game in the second inning, and today I turned it off in the second inning too. I couldn't watch it.
The other side of town, White Sox, they've got struggles, different struggles. Which is weird because the biggest strength of that team we thought would be the bullpen, and the bullpen has been not good. They've had a few meltdowns here now already.
It's funny because you see some guys in that bullpen like Kopech just blowing guys mercilessly, and you look at a number of guys, throwing really hard and they're getting outs, but they're finding different ways to lose games. When I was out walking and I saw on my phone that I was just checking the scores, and right when I checked it, I saw Adam Eaton hit a go-ahead 2-run home run. So I'm like, oh, okay, they're gonna win. And then right before I get on this show, I hadn't checked any scores since. My friend texts me this tweet saying the Bulls are the only good team in town. And I'm like, well, I think the White Sox are pretty good. And then he's like, well, if they'd stop blowing games. And then he said, of course, Hendricks blew it today. I'm like, wait, you guys lost? And then I looked and saw what happened. And I mean, yeah, it's just it's been really strange for the White Sox.
Yeah, and
because it's just strange.
All of the White Sox friends I have are just livid with Tony La Russa and the decisions he's made and just the weird lineups he's put up, and the uneven at bats that he's given to Andrew Vaughn, the way he's used the bullpen, his decision making. He's costing this team games, and he's supposed to be the one that's helping them be better. And I screamed from the top of my lungs going into spring training is, how do you anoint Andrew Vaughn? And I'm not saying he's not going to be good. It's just with the guy has so little experience, how do you anoint him? And then they do anoint him, and then suddenly he's getting, playing a game, missing 2 games. Like how is he supposed to get better? Like of course he's struggling. He's a rookie, first time in the majors with minimal number of minor league at bats. What did we calculate? How few at bats did he have in the minor leagues? And of course he's going to struggle. And he needs to be playing every day, and you're not giving that to him. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You made the decision to put him on this roster, so you got to live and die with him. It's absolutely frustrating.
Look, if you're not going to give him regular at-bats, you might as well just send him back to the minors, right? I mean...
Yeah, he's got to be playing every day. And, I know Mercedes has been, big for your team, but he's going to be a guy that regresses very quickly. Like, he's a streaky, flashy guy. People are going to figure him out real quick, and will he adjust back to the way they adjust to him? I don't know if he has that. The guy is 28 and is a rookie. How many rookies are 28 years old and become super successes? I'm not saying Mercedes can't. I'm just saying is that, it's tough to ride. I get why they're playing Mercedes over Vaughn because the production is there. A 530, a 1451 OPS versus a guy that's hitting 130 or whatever in Vaughn. Vaughn is hitting 143 with a 614 OPS. So Mercedes has over a double OPS. He's got double. If you double Vaughn's OPS and add his batting average, I think Mercedes still has a higher OPS. So I get why you're playing him, but that doesn't help either one of them. They're both guys that are going to need regular at-bats. Figure out a regular lineup. If you're going to have a guy that's going to have to sit for a while and then come in, have it be a veteran where, you know what he's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing too is from what I read about this game, because I only saw a little bit of it, seems like the White Sox are having some runners in scoring position woes as well. At least their offense isn't as bad as the Cubs, obviously, but it seems like there's some inconsistency there as well. And today that kind of bit them. So, obviously they're going to want that to get a little better too. And you're waiting for some of their big names to warm up. I know Jose Abreu's hit a couple of grand slams, but he's batting .216. I'm not so worried about him. Honestly, I think he'll get it together.
I worry about Moncada.
Yeah. Yeah, he was 0 for 5 today. He's down to 161.
We saw what he could be. He got COVID and then just really struggled. And we're like, okay, the effects got to be over by now. And, maybe he's going to warm up because it's still cold. They're playing cold weather baseball. I get. I played baseball, and when the weather's crappy, like, it sucks to hit a baseball.
It sucks.
It sucks to hit a baseball. Yes. Like, I get it. So maybe as the weather warms up, so do the bats. But it's always when your last taste of somebody's baseball play is not good, is you get flashbacks of that when they start off bad. Vaughn might have, like I keep saying, I'm not down on him for a career. I'm just saying you put him in a tough position. Zach Collins, you tossing him out there, and you're relying on guys like Lurie Garcia to produce, and like Adam Eaton's been okay for you so far. Get home run today, but like you really are relying on your stars to come out because you're filling in you're filling in a big gaps. Eloy's injury caused a big hole in your lineup, and you're filling that with as best you can with what you were given by the front office and the ownership.
Right.
And you got a good start today from Dylan Cease. Michael Kopech has looked fantastic. And Aaron Bummer struggled again today. Liam Hendricks struggled today. Garrett Crochet struggled today. Those are three guys that are supposed to just lock it down, is Bummer, Hendricks, and Crochet. And that's what you've relied on. And that's what general manager sold us on. He literally told us that when they get the lead, they will win these games. And they lost to Kansas City, who's not a good team. So there's struggles on the south side too, and I feel terrible because both sides of town, ownership closed the pocketbooks and said, deal with what you got.
Yeah. I still think the White Sox can work their way out of this. When some of their guys get hot again, I think it'll be kind of more contagious. You know me, I'm really high on the White Sox, even as a Cubs fan, where I look at the Cubs and I feel like just the core is completely stale now. But there are definitely things about the White Sox they need to just get better at. They're still playing some sloppy defense. That needs to get better. It's just some of the fundamental stuff.
You know what the worst part about today's game was for me? Going, man, I wish the Cubs could have got Whit Merrifield.
Yeah.
I don't care. I would have given up Chris Bryant for him.
Yeah. He'd be nice to have.
Plugging him at second base.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But, it's a tough start. And the White Sox, their struggles have been a little different than the Cubs because, they scored 10 against the Mariners. They lost 8-4. Dallas Keuchel had another bad start, which is tough. But they scored 6 against Kansas City, and then 3. So they've at least been able to score runs, just not consistently the runs that they wanted. Where the Cubs just can't score runs. But the Cubs bullpen has been better, and that's funny because we expected the polar opposite. We expected these are the exact extremes opposite, where the Cubs would just have a terrible bullpen, where we looked at that bullpen and said, who gets the outs here? And we're like, well, who does the? And the White Sox were like, oh man, look at this stacked bullpen, and it's been the other way around. And again, it's a long season, and come the end of the season, I think you're going to see that White Sox bullpen come into form, and you're going to see the Cubs bullpen remember who they are, especially after they flip Craig Kimbrell at the trade deadline. You're going to really see the Cubs struggle then.
Yeah, if they trade their only good bullpen pieces, then yeah.
Yeah. You better get a good player for flipping him.
They'll get a lottery ticket. Maybe a Slurpee from 7-Eleven that's only half melted.
All right. So do you want to move on to the Bears or the Blackhawks?
I don't ever want to move on to the Bears. So let's go to the Blackhawks.
I still have no idea who this team is.
You know what, Sean? I've just declared that this is a team looking to the future. They're clearly establishing that. So whatever happens. The more good that happens, the better. You saw yesterday a team that got off to such a bad start, an unbelievably terrible start. Jeremy Colleton calls timeout, gets them all settled down, and then they end up winning. There's a lot to like about this team. There's a lot that has to be worked on, but right now I'm just looking at some of the individual just team stuff, regardless of whether they win or lose, regardless of if they're going to the playoffs or not. It makes me, every good thing we see from this team makes me feel better about the future. And we went into this season knowing it was going to be about the future.
Yeah, you look at that Columbus game, and outside of the first, 3 minutes of the first period, is the Blackhawks looked very good. They looked fast. There was a lot of times where you're just like, how did they not score there? And it just looked like the dominant team, and you're like, wow. And then you watch that Dallas game, and they had, in all of their power plays in the entire game, they got 2 shots. 2 shots on 4 minutes and 28 seconds of power play time. They got 2 shots. Their penalty kill gave up 2 goals. Zadorov had another turnover that led to a goal. You even saw Duncan Keith with a turnover that led to a goal. Just so many turnovers. It was like every bad thing that they do in one game against Dallas. And I was like, that was infuriating. So it's just so inconsistent. And, it's tough because you start looking at it and you're like, man, sometimes Lankinen gets put in a spot, and sometimes you wish you're like, you can see the warts on Lankinen, because, an elite goalie would, even if he was put in that position, probably stop some of those that he lets in. But that second goal in the one that was 3 minutes into the game yesterday, I don't know what you expected from him, because it was a guy all the way on one side of the goal that was either going to take a nice shot with nobody in front of him, and then he one-timed it with somebody coming in with nobody trailing. And so it's he had to block both sides of the goal. It was either going to be, glove side or stick side, and he was hung out to dry. And I'm like, I can't put that one on the goalie at all. So but there's been some where you're just like, damn it, Lankinen, you gotta freeze that. You can't give up juicy rebounds. You gotta glove that away.
And hopefully that's all just learning experience. And, one of the nice things about Kevin Lankinen is every time he has a bad moment, every time he has a bad game, at least for the most part, we see him rebound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is promising.
Yeah.
It's promising. Yeah, it's not always pretty with him, but then, there are times he comes up huge. And there are times where he may not have the best of games, but when the game is on the line and he's got to make the big stop, he will.
So, you got a really young team, and I'm going to throw this out there. Stan made a good trade this week.
How dare you?
I know, right? I know I'm going to get beaten up by Blackhawks fans, but that trade with the Panthers, I liked it.
I mean, there's no harm in it. So you traded Lucas Wallmark and Carlson. What are you really giving away that's detrimental to the future right there?
Essentially, you gave up nothing and you took on salary to get. I mean, Stillman, he's probably going to be a serviceable guy that you put in there, but when I have a feeling. So here's how I envision things probably. Is Stillman's going to be able to fill in the gap when you dump Zadorov tomorrow. I can't.
Yeah.
Zadorov, I think, even if he's not dumped, I think you got to healthy scratch him. Stillman at least is a body and you could throw in there. But Henrik Borgstrom, I think, is going to be a good player. So this is you ate salary for a guy that was drafted in the first round that's still very young. And I read good things about him. I think this is going to be a good deal. And it's not even you took on that much money. So Panthers are essentially trying to dump some salary to make a big trade for the playoff push for this year. They're going for it this year, so they need to clear.
Which they should.
Absolutely. And Brett Connolly is not playing well, and he's making 3.5 this year, 3.5 next year. That's not that's not chump change, but that is not a ton of money. The Blackhawks have a decent amount of money that they can eat that and then be able to pick up Borgstrom is nice. That's a good trade. And when we talk about are the Blackhawks going to be buyers or sellers, you can go, yes. Because that is the type of move that they need to make. Is sure, we can eat some salary, but we need something in return. It's kind of like being on the right end of when we traded Bickle and we had to give up Teuvo Teravainen to get rid of Bickle. And now we're hopefully on the right side of that trade where, sure, we'll eat 2 years of Connolly, but you got to give us Borgstrom. So I like that. And if we get some more of that tomorrow and, maybe do a little dumping on our own. Zadorov. I'm okay with that types of moves. Like if I don't want to take on salary for no reason. If like there's no player where I'm like, we need to go out and buy that guy. Like we are one, frontline forward, first line forward or first line center away from competing for a Stanley Cup. And that's what we have to do to get like, no. That's not where we are. It's being able to take on salary to get a potential top guy that's going to help you next year, the year after that. That's the kind of moves I want to make. And I'm all for that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the other move he made too. Like he brought back Vinny Hinostroza, and that's just one of those moves I just kind of shrug and say whatever.
No, but we've seen Hinostroza looked okay, and what did they give up for him? So like it's
they didn't give up anything.
They didn't give up anything. So that's another thing is, if you're going to give up, like if you're going to do trades where it's dump our garbage for your garbage, I'm fine with, because I think sometimes those are helpful for the players and the teams. It's just churning the bottom of the roster. I'm always a big believer in that is draft well sign good free agents, and then the bottom of the roster, just churn it until you find guys that work. And sometimes it's just luck. Sometimes it's finding the right puzzle piece. You know, like, sure, that guy may have sucked for 4 other teams, but maybe he just finds the chemistry with between, you know, in this line. You're like, I don't know why, but it works on this line. And all right, that works when you churn the bottom of the roster. So I'm fine churning the bottom of the roster, but I'm really fine with dumping or, you know, taking on a little salary to get future guys. I think that's the right move because they don't have to pay many people right now, and they were able to get the flexibility from guys that can't play anymore. You know, like that Connolly contract is not going to affect you from signing some of the other guys. And you're going to be able to take on some salary, and then you're going to be adding younger guys that are going to help you and keeping the roster balance between high cost veterans and low cost productive rookies.
Yes, there's actually some bit of hope going forward.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, whether or not you make the playoffs, I just want them to finish the season strong, because I think if they finish strong, you know, I know it's cliche and I know it doesn't always matter, but if you're trying to kind of go into a next phase with something you already have, you know, the stronger you finish, the better you feel, right?
I think so. And with a young team, I think building that confidence that they can play with, you know, the really good teams in this league, that doesn't go unnoticed. You know, the confidence, the experience, I think it's all important.
And, you know, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but wouldn't it be great if we got Taves back next year?
I mean, I think that's the plan. That's kind of what I heard is, you know, he's going to take this year and just get his health back together and then be back next year. And until I hear otherwise, I'm just going to assume that, you know, why push yourself to come back this year?
No, there's no reason to come back this year. There really isn't. But you know what I think about this team is, you see the strengths, you see the weaknesses. Imagine if this team had Jonathan Taves at the faceoff dot.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan Taves' leadership with his young players, the flexibility that you have with Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane, and being able to either split them up and make 2 good lines, or the nuclear option, putting them together.
Yeah, and you know, I think of 2 key players that the Blackhawks don't have, Brandon Saad and Jonathan Taves. Imagine if they had those 2 guys on this team. You'd have a really good faceoff dot / leader and a really good 2-way forward. A guy that can score 20, 25 goals a year and plays very good on the defensive end.
So, I'm excited to see. I think, you know, if you put a Taves with a Kubalik next year, I think that makes it a really good line. Makes Kubalik better. I'm excited. I'm honestly excited. And I don't know. I need to talk to some people that are better at understanding the NHL salary cap. But are they getting salary relief for Jonathan Taves this year too?
I'd have to look into that. I'm not completely sure.
I don't know. Is he like long-term IR? So then
he is long-term IR. I know that.
So do they get like an extra $10 million? Like, I don't know. I
just picture Stan Bowman in his office doing like this sniveling little laugh, like
It's the NHL salary cap is so confusing. So is the NBA. Like, you're like, well, they get a mid.
So is the NHL the NFL.
And at least I get the NFL, like that. I understand, and you know,
but there's still a lot to it.
Oh, there's a total lot to it, but I get it. And I understand, but NBA is probably the worst, because you're like, well, you have to renounce the rights, and you got this mid-level exception, and you got the bird rights, and I'm like, you know, I ask somebody else. And NHL is weird too, because it's like, it's some of it you're like, okay, well, there's no hard fast rule. Sometimes the league has to make a decision, and you're like, why is that so confusing? I think the league has to make a decision on whether or not you get the cap flexibility from a player's salary if they're injured. Like, I think they have to make a decision. It's not like, oh, this is the rule. Boom, you follow it and you get it. I think the NHL has to make a decision. So it's so confusing. I should ask some people that know much more than I.
We need to have them on the show, like we had Brad Spielberger for the NFL.
Yeah, that was great. And it's like I know quite a bit about NHL or NFL salary cap, but then talking to Brad, where he just knows all the in and outs, you're just like, man, you're like, I know a ton more than even fairly knowledgeable fans. But then you're like, talk to this guy, and you're like, man, you realize how much more you can learn about it, and you're like, and that there's people whose sole job is to finesse the cap, and it's kind of incredible.
And if you want to get a good idea of how, weird NHL salary cap can be, remember, virtually every time there's time for the CBA to be negotiated, there's always a lockout.
Mm-hmm. So let's wrap this up with a little Bears talk. I know you don't want to. There's not a ton. There's not a ton.
I'm gonna
here.
get on my stilts.
Is I guess the first thing, Taylor Gabriel announced he's retiring.
Hey, good for him.
6 years in the league. He opted out last year, so he didn't play last year. And then nobody signed him this year, so I think he was just like, all right, well, I guess I'm done with football. Surprised. I think he's young enough. He could have picked up with somebody, training camp injury or after the draft. Teams that are still receiver thirsty. I think he could have caught on with somebody. He's not that old, but if your heart's not in it, and you worry about your safety with COVID, then I understand. I get it.
Sure.
And then I just want to talk quarterbacks a little bit. I know we've talked ad nauseum, but I just keep worrying about what Ryan Pace is going to do with this team. And my big fear is that he's going to hamstring us for years going forward by making a big splash trade.
Well, he's trying to save his job, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Andy Dalton's on a 1-year deal. And I think this year is also going to be the last year of Nick Foles' contract as well, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So the Bears, those are the only two quarterbacks they have under contract. So what do you do after that? You've got to figure out you're back in this again for next year. And to be able to trade up to get somebody is going to cost you a fortune. We saw what the 49ers gave up to move up to number 3, and they were coming from 12 to 3, and it cost them a fortune.
But the people who run the 49ers are competent, so,
Well, I mean, I think they're looking at it as, hey, those first round picks we're going to give up, we're planning for those to be, the 32nd pick.
Oh yeah, they're trying to get back to the Super Bowl again.
So
I still think they have the talent to do it. You give them a good quarterback, and all of a sudden you're looking at a Super Bowl contender again.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they were just decimated by injuries last year. So I think, if you're giving up some 32nd or 31st or 29th picks for a couple of those to move up to 3, that's a lot different than the situation the Bears are in, where, the Bears are probably drafting anywhere from 1st through 18th. I'm guessing that they're probably in the bottom half of the draft. So that's a lot different of a pick than a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. So when you trade your first round pick next year versus the 49ers, yours is probably going to be around 15 or lower. And that's a lot to give up as opposed to a 31st or 32nd pick. So I worry about them trading a lot to move up. And if you trade, I'm hearing rumors that the Jets might be willing to trade back and that just nobody's wanted that second pick. Let's say you move up to that second pick. You give up a fortune to move up from 20 to second. You're probably giving up 3 first-round picks. And if you hit, and whoever you decide at number 2 is the guy, and turns out to be Aaron Rodgers, turns out to be Tom Brady, you go, okay, we gave up 3 first-round picks for a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers. Awesome. I can live with that. But are we confident that that's the guy we're going to get?
We're going to pick a tight end.
And, I'm hearing rumors that number 3 at the 3rd pick, that Mac Jones is going to be the guy, which I'd be really shocked. Like, I like Mac Jones. I think he's a high floor, but guy with a visible ceiling. I think he's got a ceiling.
He's not Trevor Lawrence, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's not. But I think he's a guy that he won't fail. But I don't think he's. I can't even think of a comp of that type of player. But I think he's not a failure. But would I trade up to 3rd to get him? I don't think so. If you get Mac Jones at 20, you're like, okay, I'm happy with this. But if you get him at 3rd, whereas Trey Lance and Justin Fields, I think, are guys that are their picks that could be busts, but I think their ceiling potential is super high. And
I could be wrong, but Justin Fields, I don't know. I just don't see it.
The guy's athletic. The guy's a winner.
Yes, he is.
He's a winner. He's got a strong arm. He played high level competition in college. All the throws that people went ooh and ah about with Zach Wilson is Justin Fields did those same throws, and he did them in games too. So I think Trevor Lawrence, I think, is a slam dunk. I think Zach,
if he's healthy, yeah.
I think Zach Wilson is probably going to be a very good quarterback. I think Fields is probably going to be a very good quarterback. I like Trey Lance a lot, but I could see where he could be a bust. It's tough to translate, very limited competition, and didn't play last year except for one game because of COVID. And they had to basically beg to get that one game, so he had something to showcase for his last year. I get that, but honestly, if I'm the Bears, I'm not mortgaging the future to, if one of those guys just happen to slip and make it past 15 and you move from 20 to 15, 16, 17, 18, etc. All right, I'm okay with that. But to move into the top 10, top 12 to get one, I just don't think you have the luxury of that capital to spend when there's a couple of guys that I think, are going to be available. There's Davis Mills, who I think will be there in the 3rd, 4th round. I'm not in love with him, but I think he could be okay. Kellen Mond, who a lot of people think is their sleeper. I'm still not that high on him, but he's probably going to be available in the 3rd. Kyle Trask is a guy I like out of Florida. I like him a lot. I think you can, if the Bears, I think they might have to trade up in the 2nd to get him, but I think you can live with that, trading up in the 2nd. But there's two guys that are going to go late, and I like them both quite a bit, and they've got warts, but I think they're guys that if you coach them right and with hard work, I think they could be successes. And the two guys are Jamie Newman from Wake Forest and Felipe Franks from Arkansas. And I watch both of those guys and I'm like, there's a lot of things that they do really well. Like Jamie Newman is very athletic, makes good throws. I don't think he has the biggest arm, but he's got a nice touch. I really think he could be Teddy Bridgewater, which if you draft him in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, getting a Teddy Bridgewater type player, I think that's a steal. And Felipe Franks has all the arm. It's just he's not very athletic. He's a definite pocket passer. But I mean, I'm gonna say not quality of player, but style of player. Tom Brady. And again, I'm gonna repeat, style. I'm not saying that he's Tom Brady and is gonna win 9,000 Super Bowls, etc., and be in the Hall of Fame before he retires. I'm saying in style of play. I think he's a very smart player, and I think a lot of the same warts that caused Tom Brady to slide in the draft when he was drafted 20-some years ago, I think those are the same things that are going to hit Felipe Franks. But I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome them like Tom Brady, but if he's there in the 6th round with one of your 3 6th-round picks, I would take him in a heartbeat. Even if you took a quarterback earlier, you look at what Washington did when they drafted RG3. They took Kirk Cousins in that same draft. People were like, why? Why would you do that? And they rode RG3 as much as they could, and then they flipped Kirk Cousins. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's so bad. You've never had a good quarterback. You know, you never had a top flight quarterback on this team. So even if you were to get a Kyle Trask that you think is a high level quarterback, you know, if you spend one of your 6th rounders on a Felipe Franks to you know, mentor and grow, I don't think that's the worst thing. Is, you know, if they both fail, then you had 2 bites at the apple. But if they both succeed, I think, you know, that's huge.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I just
don't want to see them burn the future to try to get a quarterback when I think they can take their 1st rounder and still get a young quarterback that could be very good in the 2nd or 3rd in this draft.
No, I definitely hear you. Honestly, bring in as many quarterbacks as you can, but yeah, be mindful of how you do it, I guess.
I mean, my hope is that Denver trades for Teddy Bridgewater, because I think then that for the Bears, I think having people already have their quarterback situation at least short-term comfortable is better for the Bears, because then they're not forced. You know, Kyle Trask I could see somebody taking him in the late 1st, but I could see him falling to the late 2nd. And, you know, it just sort of depends on where everybody goes. You know, if all the really thirsty, quarterback thirsty teams trade up early in this draft for the top 5 guys, and then, or trade for existing players like Sam Darnold or Teddy Bridgewater, or they sign guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you're like, okay, then it makes the Bears go, you know, what level of comfort do I have that one of these 2nd round guys, 2nd tier guys will fall. And I think the kind of tiers in the draft is, I would say, you have the top tier, which is your Trevor Lawrence, your Zach Wilson, your Trey Lance, and your Justin Fields. Then you've got that 2nd tier, which is probably Mac Jones and Kyle Trask. Your 3rd tier, which is Kellermond and Davis Mills. And then your bottom tier, which is your Jamie Newmans, your Felipe Franks, your Peyton Ramsey, your Sam Ellingers. And I think the Bears just have to, you know, really weigh their comfort level of how aggressive are they going to be versus what the reward could be.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, I like Mac Jones, but I don't think you mortgage the future for him because I don't think he's, I look at him as a Jimmy Garoppolo type, where you're like, you know what, he does a lot of nice things, but he's not going to win us the Super Bowl.
Right.
He's not going to lose us the Super Bowl. He's more than a game manager, but he's not Pat
Mahomes. He's not Drew Brees.
Yeah, he's not gonna put the whole team on his back, but he can definitely make your team better, but he can't carry you. I sort of see that as Mac Jones. If he falls to 20, it's hard to pass that up, because I think he's going to be much better than what you have. But whereas Kyle Trask, I think, he could be a bust, but I think he has a higher ceiling than Mac Jones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we've spat enough fire for one evening.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or on Facebook, Alex Pat Sports Chat, or alexpatsportschat.wordpress.com. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. And again, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna